documentation more than anything else. You won't see yourself on Channel 2 tonight.
Yeah.
So, let me see if I can find what I'm looking for here now. So when did you work at the state hospital, Carl? When did you start?
I started working there after my discharge from the Navy Hospital Corps. So I didn't have to wait long after the application was applied, they called me right away. And they needed help, and they realized that I had experience in hospital work.
Ah, so what year was that?
Pardon me?
What year was that?
Well, this was 1950.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And so what was your first job?
My first job was the electroencephalograph.
Oh,
Are you familiar with that?
yes, where you put all of the different,
Yes.
wires on the
We used about 8 and 10 electrodes on the surface of the scalp. At that time, we were primarily epileptic hospital. It is the epileptic hospital of Minnesota, the only one.
Right.
So about 90% of our patients, we call them patients now because it's still a hospital. Later on, they were residents, and after that, you know, they had another name.
Clients.
Yeah, you have to. So, but at that time, we referred to them as patients because they were in the hospital and getting care.
And that was right in the infirmary then that you did that?
Well, it was a special EEG lab. We were in a small, to start with, we were in a small lab in the main building.
Oh, yeah, because the infirmary wouldn't have been built.
The infirmary wasn't built yet. So we were right across from the X-ray and the lab and my little room.
Where was that in the main building?
Well, let's see, you'd have to go, you go right through, past the offices there, the telephone operator, and then you make a right. And it's about half a hallway down. It was the lab and the EEG and X-ray. Yeah.
So it's down towards where the business office
Yes.
was. Okay. What do you remember from your first day of work?
Well, I was assigned to do the EEGs right away. I had some experience in that work, so I was right in the EEG lab, and I assisted the X-ray man with patients who wouldn't stand still, and I got acquainted quite fast. It was interesting to meet the residents there and the employees who were quite dedicated to work in such an atmosphere.
Do you remember if you got a tour of the facility?
Did I get tours?
Yeah, no, did you get a tour?
No, I don't recall, but there were groups that came there and toured the buildings.
But you don't have any first impressions of touring out in the...
No.
So mainly you did EEGs when you...
To start with.
To start.
But if you got a lot of space in it.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Now, what did you do in the Navy?
Doing the work?
In the Navy.
Oh, I was a hospital corpsman.
Oh, okay.
And I worked in three hospitals, and then we, Great Lakes, Oakland, California, and there was two, no, it was just two, I'm sorry. And then they were needed help in the South Pacific. So we before we knew it, we were on a troop transport to the south theater of the war down and we ended up in south of Guadalcanal. And the Navy had built a 300-bed hospital down there. On the island, Espiritu Santos. So we docked there and we were assigned tents. At that time it was rough going. And then the hospital wards were Quonset huts. There was room for 12 or 13 patients. Our patients came off of most of them were from ships from all over the world. They knew that the Navy had a hospital there, and we admitted those patients who the corpsman on the ships was he couldn't take care of them. So they came to the hospital for doctor's care. Most of those ships didn't have a doctor, just the corpsman. So they came into our base hospital, number 3, and for further treatment, and we either give them their treatments and get them back to duty as fast as we could, and if they were so serious, they were then shipped back to the United States, in a hospital there.
So you did have a pretty good medical background then before you started?
Well, before I landed there, yes. Because we were only the doctors and us, and we met some talented, wonderful, devoted doctors, and it was an interesting experience, but we were away from civilization.
Yeah, that's true, that's true. So now, are you a native of Cambridge?
Yes.
So
yeah.
you came home essentially from the...
Yes, but then I worked, we spent 3 Easters, our group, down in this island, and at that time, Navy also had a hospital in New Zealand. So a group of New Zealand hospital corpsmen would come to the base hospital in the jungle like we had there, and part of our group would go on to New Zealand for R&I and work for the hospital down there. It was a wonderful arrangement. Everybody looked forward to going down there in New Zealand, and it came our turn, our group, to go. And they discontinued the practice.
Oh, no. So you never got there.
That was so it was pretty close to then that we would be going back to a hospital in the United States. So we didn't feel too bad. Yeah.
It would have been fun to see, though.
Yes, indeed. Otherwise, it's quite a trip to go down there and visit.
Yes.
My brother-in-law, my daughter and son-in-law just came home from New Zealand, Australia, to visit our granddaughter, who was down there studying for 6 months, and they enjoyed the people and all down there.
Yeah, but it's a long way.
Yes, it was a long
flight.
trip.
Yeah.
A long trip. Have you been down that area?
No, I would love to go though.
It really was. Well, it was because Katie was down there studying, and
Sure.
to go down there and someone to visit, and she enjoyed having them come, and
Sure.
she's quite a little go-getter. She's a sophomore in Texas Christian, and she, after getting her studies completed at Australia, she had met so many friends down in New Zealand. She just took off and visited them in New Zealand.
Oh, wow. That's great.
Yeah. She, her dad let her go, and she had a wonderful trip. Now she's back in Texas again, back to the studies.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So we go on here.
Sure. So what did you do after you did the EEG? What did you move on to?
Okay. The only laboratory was the blood laboratory and X-ray that they had at that time. Hematology, I think, is the better name for the blood laboratory. But other than that, that's all they had. So I had done the BMRs, basic metabolism rates,
Oh, okay.
and the EKG, electrocardiograms, and I subbed in X-ray. And I was a bus driver, ambulance driver, photographer.
Now, what were you a photographer?
Oh, every once in a while, the St. Paul would like some building, pictures of the buildings. And I remember one cold day, the business manager and the superintendent and I were out taking, and they were telling me what areas, and it was so cold the camera froze up. It wasn't a modern camera like they have now. So that was the end of that. But we got a few pictures before they froze up. Yeah, and let's see.
Because, I would love to find more old photographs of Cambridge, but they're just not around.
Isn't that something?
Yeah.
No.
So, but you sent yours down to St. Paul. I mean, you took the photos and then sent them.
Well, I gave him the film, and
oh, okay. So you didn't even
the
see
business manager took him. What he done with them, I don't know. I suppose he sent them to St. Paul. And I helped applying casts. It's another job, and then after the extremity had been healed, I removed the cast. Doctor's orders, of course.
Sure.
Been on long enough, can you have time to remove Charlie's cast this afternoon? Yes, I will squeeze it in here. Yeah. So I guess that's... and then the doctors appreciated the help of consultant doctors. They came up from the contracts for consultant.
Sure.
And there were 3 doctors, the cardiac doctor and ophthalmologist and the podiatrist. All these doctors met in the new EEG lab. They made it purposely big so it could be used for consultant examinations.
So this was in the new building?
In the infirmary now?
The infirmary, the new infirmary?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the ophthalmologist would bring an optician with him, but they only came once a month. And the day after or so, the patient would fall, bend up his glasses. At that time, it was just the gold rim glasses, and here they'd have to go with these crooked glasses any which way, and some couldn't wear them at all. I said, my goodness, there's any way I could get a couple of instruments and pliers and glass tools. And before you know it, I was straightening glasses. And so I was doing some optical work and working with Dr. Larson, the ophthalmologist. And he would prescribe lenses, and I would had some samples there, and I'd order new glasses for them. So I got into the optical business too. And being a sub-X-ray man, I prepared then for Dr. Amplatz, the chief of radiology at the university, and pulled his X-rays that he wanted to see, and assisted him on his visits. He would visit on call. And I worked with, the most satisfying work was working with Dr. Hallberg, professor from university, and Dr. Engel, the clinical director. Early years, the only thing they had for epileptic treatments was the bromides. So here comes Dr. Hallberg, Professor Hallberg and Engel with new medication. And I would do an EEG for they would pick out the patients that seemed that would be a good patient to change their medication. So I done the EEGs for them, and they prescribed this new medication, Dilantin and phenobarbital.
Oh. Now, Carl, what year roughly would that be?
That would be about 1960, because I had been there a few years before they started this. They had, the new medications were approved. So they prescribed, and with wonderful results. They reduced the number of seizures for some of the patients so much that they were able to be transferred or to a hospital close to their home, instead of being from way up in the boonies, come down to Cambridge. Their families, it was quite a trip in those days. Couldn't visit them very often. So this worked out good to treat some of them, transfer their home. Some, after being home for a while, even were discharged. And we heard they were driving cars. With the seizures under control, they were able to get a license. So it was rewarding to know you were in a team that helped them.
Now, you call this research, though, right? This wasn't just prescribing.
No, they prescribed it.
Yeah.
They
was
prescribed
it a part of a research project then?
Yes, it was part of it, but you can't say it was, I don't know, it was research, because they prescribed and...
So it wasn't a clinical trial or anything like that?
They had a record of them while they were still, before they transferred them, made sure that the thing was working all right before they transferred them out. Yeah, that was Hallberg's. Here, I'll show you afterwards, later on. Well, I also worked with a pathologist in the morgue.
Oh, really?
At first, I just went down there to view to see the organs of the body, and especially the brain. That's what my specialty was, the brain. And before you know it, the first doctor, this was some years past now, the doctor retired, the assistant doctor, and I took his place. And so the pathologist and I would do the EEGs, or the complete study of the body.
Now, that was in the new building? There wasn't?
Yes, in the basement of the new building, infirmary, yeah.
Yeah, there wasn't a morgue in the...
Down in the basement, we had the morgue.
Yeah, I remember touring that.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Not when there was ever anyone there.
Off the record, I had to go down there and get the instruments out for the pathologist was coming. They would, of course, know that someone passed away, and the parents had approved or wanted a post done. So I would go down there quite a bit to check how things were. And one New Year's, they had, before we went in to the morgue, it went through a storeroom. And here, there was a big Santa Claus, life-size Santa Claus standing there. And we knew that one of the engineers didn't appreciate going into the morgue for his rounds of checking the water pipes and things like that. So I took the Santa Claus and put him on the slab and put a sheet over him. And of course we didn't know when he was going to make his rounds because this was down the basement. And so one day he came up this elevator couldn't go fast enough. He might have taken the steps, but he came all out of breath and, why didn't you tell me you had a body down there?
Little did he know it was Santa Claus.
Oh, so we had a little fun. We had a little fun down there. It wasn't always the best place to work, but
well, and it wasn't a very nice room. It was kind of a dingy room with the cement walls and...
Yeah, no curtains. Nothing like a...
No.
So, but it was...
But that didn't bother you?
No.
You were more interested in it than...
Yeah. No,
because I was offered the chance to go to an autopsy and I declined.
You did, yeah. No, it didn't bother me. It was interesting. This was off the record too. The first one that came out there was Dr. Stengel from St. Cloud. He was quite a coach. And it was kind of a warm day and we didn't have air conditioning down there. And he took off his gown and he took off his shirt and everything.
Oh, he was hot, huh?
He was hot. And you know how they talk about they had to be gowned up and gloves and all? Dr. Stendhal, they didn't know anything about diseases that would spread as they do now, They're so cautious that you can't do anything in the hospital. They put on the gloves and...
Yeah, mask and the whole shot. He took his shirt off.
But Doctor said he took his shirt off. He was perspiring and... Yeah, they made a comment to the other guys after that Stengel was quite a character.
Now, were there often a lot of people that came and observed an autopsy?
Some of them would come. Some doctors would come. I remember Dr. Mandak. She would come and put her handkerchief over her nose, as though her handkerchief would filter out the odor. So she would come in and observe the doctors, especially if they were their patients. They wanted to know why they died. Dr. Stengel would do the body opening up. Every organ was removed and weighed. And I of course had to get the brain out.
Oh.
Yeah, with that saw, ricocheting saw, familiar? We would cut here and then across up here and take that skull out then and get it out, and the doctor would examine the brain and for his report. He quite a complete report. And we put a little notch in it here. That kept it from moving
Oh,
around.
Sure.
After the scalp was put back and sewed up. So we tried to hide it quite well. And then the Carlsons came pick up the body. They done fixed it up real nice for the funeral. Yeah, that was interesting too, working with the pathologists.
Oh, yeah, I bet that really was.
Yeah, yeah. Let's see.
Well, you really did have a variety of experiences.
I really had a variety of jobs. They were kidding me. They called me Dr. Erickson. Anyhow, that's off the record too. In fact, I got some business letters titled Dr. Erickson, and of course the post office knew who it belonged to. Yeah. And then I done the hearing tests. They didn't have. Got a crash course in audiology in the University of Minnesota. My supervisor arranged for me to go down there on state time and take a course in hearing audiology. It was a Mr. Starr from Cambridge that was in charge of it, that department down there.
Huh.
Oh, sure, he says, and then I could come down there, and they made arrangements, and that was interesting. So I done the hearing tests. Yeah, I guess that completes most of my jobs.
Well, that's quite a list. What do you think would you consider the most rewarding job that you had?
Helping the unfortunate, working with the unfortunate patients down there.
Any specific examples that you remember about feeling?
No, I don't have any personal ones, but working with little Tommy Taylor. Well, here's a sample. Here's a sample of EEG tracings. That's one page.
Oh, okay.
That's one page. We do about 50 to 100 pages. The EEG console was like a small piano, and the paper would come up here and go across and into a basket, not a basket, but a tray over here, and it would fold.
Oh, okay.
You're familiar with something like that?
Yeah.
Sure. You're used to talk to you. You know what I'm talking without any explanation. And here then were 8-channel needles making these marks on the paper as it came through.
So each wire from
yeah.
the skull.
Yeah, each one, they're occipital, parietal, you see there.
Yep.
They're putting the locations. We could do different areas, and doctors will read these, but with a complete test that the waves would be abnormal in a certain place, and the tumor is here, or the tumor is back here, or the scar tissue from a previous injury back here, where he fell down and hit his head, and that helped the doctors prescribe the medications for them, and it was quite helpful.
Oh, okay.
But now they have CAT scans, so the EEG is, well, there are a few of them left in the hospitals. We were the only EEG lab between Duluth and Minneapolis.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I got patients from all the state hospitals around here, And even I've done some from the Cambridge Clinic, Dr. Larson, or who was the other doctor now? Ray Magnuson, Dr. Magnuson. They heard about the EEG machine, and I'm not sure who read them for him, but no, they left him for our consultant to read.
Oh.
Yeah,
Sure.
that's right. Yeah,
That makes
that's
sense.
right. They didn't have the electroencephalographic consultant at that time. So it was
Yeah,
quite interesting.
I actually had encephalitis when I was a child, and I had a electroencephalography
Oh, yeah.
done on me, so,
Uh-huh. Did they use needles?
yes,
Oh, they did.
yeah. A little mud and and then they pushed it right into the scalp, and it hurt, not a lot, just a little.
Yeah, well, it wouldn't be right in, it would be kind of on the side.
Yeah.
Because you run into the bone right away. But,
I remember it pricking.
oh, yeah, of course you would, yeah. But we, out there, if it wasn't started, or if they knew that I was using needles, they would hesitate in coming.
Oh, yes.
No, so we had tiny little discs, Cook's metal, made out there at the Axmeyer machine shop in Rochester. Made these discs for all the university. And they were attached then to the electrode that goes into the big console. And we'd hold them down and put glue, collodion, and blow, had an airstream here, and for about 20 seconds they were solid.
Oh,
and
okay.
that was
Collodion, is that what
yeah,
you said?
collodion, yeah, to adhere them to the scalp. The needles, anytime they'll move, the needles would move and cause distortion. But of course you would be
Yeah,
cooperative.
Yeah, I think so.
So we thought the discs were the best thing. So I was telling you about the special patient,
Yeah,
little Tommy Taylor. He was the
Oh,
star.
yeah, I remember him.
Is that
Yes,
right?
Yes, he had osteogenesis imperfecta.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah.
the brittle bone.
Yes, yes. So Chaplain Pauling wrote this little flyer about Tommy, and he was quite a guy.
Now, can I borrow this and copy it? And get it back to you?
Yeah. You mean
Well, I've got a copy machine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can do for both.
I can get it right here.
Oh,
But
well,
if you take care of it, it's the only one that we have around.
yeah. I can do a nice color copy, so it'll
Oh,
match.
wonderful.
Just like it, that would
Yeah.
be great.
Yeah.
So, yeah, this was, okay. he
Yeah,
died in
that would be
1969.
a good article in one of your chapters
Yeah.
of a patient.
Yeah,
I'm going to have copies made and enclose it to my friends for Christmas.
Oh,
Tell
you want me-
them about the.
you want me to make you some copies? I
Oh,
could sure
that'd
do
be
that.
wonderful.
Sure, I can do that.
That would be
How
wonderful.
many do you want?
Oh, could you make a dozen?
Oh, yeah. Sure, I'll do that.
Oh,
I'll put
wonderful.
12 right on there, and then I'll remember.
Yeah, I'm always telling about our residents are common, the ones that we remember.
Yeah.
Going back to, how much time do you have?
Oh, I've got about, I'm more worried about when my battery goes dead than anything
Oh.
else. That's how much time I have. Oh, we're doing fine.
Are we? Okay.
Yep.
When we were talking about being discharged, many of the patients, this is my home.
Yeah.
I don't want to go. There's one little girl, can I mention, an Indian girl?
Uh-huh.
And, oh no, she wasn't going to go home. She was going to leave. This is my home. She wasn't going back to the reservation, I got clean sheets and good food here.
Yeah.
They had a hard time.
Yeah.
And she held up for quite a while. And some of the boys, they really, this is where we belong.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another one, Indian boy, was, he was a man. He was wonderful in construction. So every spring, he would go home and work in construction. And then to get admitted again in the fall, he would have a seizure out the front gate, out in the highway. He would pretend he would. So he'd be laying there, and the tourists or people would come by. Oh my, they picked him up and hauled him back to the hospital, brought him into the hospital. And Dr. Gooley said, "Oh, that's Harry. It's time to come back for the winter." It was a routine thing.
Well, that's funny.
Yeah. So, and helping with Pastor Pauling's chancel dramas.
Oh, yes.
They visited the churches and put on chancel dramas, and also Christmas and Easter programs. I drove the bus and helped with the props, and there's where little Tommy Taylor was the star.
Yeah.
And we visited, or we put on a Sunday evening at Central Lutheran, Minneapolis, and that was the last chancel drama that Tommy was with us. He passed away about 5 weeks after we had been in Central Lutheran. And one of the pastors from Central Lutheran came up and spoke at his funeral. So he was impressed by Tommy too. Yeah. Yeah. So those are kind of the highlights that out there. And of course, the other highlight was Professor Hallberg. In doing this research, we would work on special studies, and some of them would last overnight sometimes, and that one project lasted 36 hours. Of course, we took a few little cat naps in between, but my Clarice was wondering we were going to come home.
Now, Clarice worked out here too.
Yes, yes. She was a teacher out there in special ed. Yeah.
Project Teach.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Where did you work now then?
Well, I worked in Project Teach. Matter of fact, Clarice worked for me.
Sure, that's where first heard of you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And was she a teacher before she came out here?
Yes,
That's kind of my recollection.
She was a 5th grade teacher up north in Carlston, Minnesota, and she wanted to come down towards the cities and got a job here at Cambridge with Mr. Kotke. Did you know Superintendent Kotke?
No.
No, before your time of it, and he hired her, and she enjoyed working, and that's where I met her, and eventually married her. Yeah. Well, we go back to Professor Hallberg.
Yes.
He got a grant from the U.S. Army, Air Force. They wanted to study the biorhythms of the body, the changes of the body on an airplane going from country to country overseas, called jet lag.
Oh, okay.
Now, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Okay, so I joined, he picked out 3 of the lab guys, Frank Jones, Russ Wendell, and myself, for Cambridge, and 4 fellows, 3 guys, and a doctor from the university labs. We studied our ourselves, our bodies, and different tests, we had to create a norm for each one. So it took about 3-4 months before we went. It was different to do these tests. Finally, we had enough tests done, so he granted that he made an arrangement with the Air Force to pick us up. And we flew to Tachikawa Air Force Base in Japan. And then there were more tests we had to see. And we were down there for 2 weeks to get the complete test. We did get some time off so we could see the cities,
Well, sure,
cities,
sure.
and go up to what's that mountain? I've forgotten now.
Fuji?
Yeah, Mount Fuji, yeah. So that was quite a trip. And then we flew back home and had some more tests to see again what jet lag would do here. So it was quite a complete study. Dr. Halberg, he made a whole book of the results. Of course, we never get to see one, but so it goes.
Yeah.
But I guess the Air Force was happy with it, and but they treated us well, and we were surprised that such wonderful food down there at the air base. My, it's just wonderful.
Oh, boy.
And the Japanese at that time, they were real friendly, and we'd go in stores and they would just bow and
Now, what year would this have been?
this was 1984. And if you needed some help or asked the directions, they would come out of the store and point and show you where to go. They were really, really friendly. Of course, I suppose they wanted the American tourist
Sure.
trade too.
Sure.
It works both ways.
Yeah.
So that was one of the highlights of working out there in Passapartout, of course, and yeah.
Well, Carl, if we do, or when we write the book, what's the one thing that you'd kind of like people to remember about the state hospital? If you had to,
A home for the people that needed help.
Okay.
We needed medical help and some training. The painter had people to work for him, and they were learning the painting trade. The the farmer out there, he showed the boys
Now, you must have missed most of the farm, because that closed like in
Is that right?
1961.
No, they had, I remember them, what is,
Well,
you
no,
said?
you started in 1950, and
Yeah,
you closed in 61.
and they closed in 51,
61,
61.
yeah, 61. So
Okay.
there was 10 years.
They
or
had
something.
this wonderful, I suppose you know all this, I'm repeating now.
No, not necessarily.
Farmer Lee was the superintendent of the farm, and he had all these boys working for him, volunteers, and each boy had a cow to take care of. And this is my cow. I'll take care of it. Now, you take care of your cow, that was my
No, I
job.
hadn't heard that.
Is that right?
Yeah.
And they had these beautiful Holstein cattle, and everything was just spick and span in there, and they took such a pride in helping Mr. Lee and taking care of my cow. And Ernest Ranta, did you know him?
No.
Did you hear of him?
No.
He had the highest IQ of all the patients out there. And he had one hand and the other one was kind of withered. And he had a horse and a cart. And that was his job, to go down to the barn, pick up the milk, and take it to the little creamery. Mr. Paulson was the tenant there, the butter maker. And he would pasture it.
Gilbert Paulson?
No, Gilbert worked on the ward.
Okay.
I don't think there were any relation.
Okay.
No, I don't think so. And so this Ernest Ranta would take his horse and with one hand, of course, the horse knew where to go by himself, Ernest, just to have him stop when he wants to, and probably even stopped. I thought that was the kind of cute, or different, hauling the milk to the creamery. Yeah, I see that.
And you remember the bridge that was down over, across the river?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of that till recently too, that there was a bridge.
Yeah. They kind of missed that because the cows went across there to pasture across the river. Yeah.
Do you remember the murder in 1960?
Yeah, Cottage 5.
Yeah. What do you remember about that?
Well, just that I've forgotten his name. Do you have his name from the...
You know, I have it somewhere. I don't have it with me.
I see. Anyhow, he was going home Saturday evening, and the boys in Cottage 5, some of them were still sitting out on the benches, and one of them had some kind of a instrument that this fellow was going down the steps there, and he, one blow, I guess, and he killed him. It was sad more than one way. He had met this lady attendant in another cottage, and they were both widows, and they had plans on being married.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh.
Like I say, it was sad because they had plans. But and then there was another murder in one of the cottages.
One patient killing another
Yeah.
patient. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You were familiar with that?
Bill Bernier. That name sounds familiar? Bill Bernier.
Yes.
That's the one?
Yeah, he was a teacher there, wasn't he?
No, you're thinking Bill Pino.
Yeah, that's right. Bernier.
Yeah,
Bill.
he was a patient.
Oh. No, I don't remember.
Okay.
Was he involved in it?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Oh, my. And then another thing I remember, all these patients and not having a place to go or going out. I was driving a school bus at that time too, and I asked the supervisor, Archie Smith, is it possible if I could borrow the school bus and take boys, I said, to some of the games in Cambridge? Yes, he says, yeah, he'd give you your shirt off his back. I'll see the superintendent and clear it with him. So I told Recreation, and from there on, we went quite regularly to the basketball games and the football games. Well, I said, there's one problem. They don't have any money. So, whoa, that's no problem. You come in the side door, and the bleachers, you can have the bleachers right over there.
Oh, free admission, huh?
Yeah, and it turned out to be right by the band. They were watching the band just as much as they were enjoying. They liked music.
Sure.
You know, Mr. Hardy came out there many times for Christmas programs and other. Do you remember Mr. Hardy?
Oh, yes.
Were you there that night that he couldn't help but notice this little fellow sitting in the front row? Every concert, he was there. He was kind of... And Mr. Hardy said, you like music? Oh, sure do. How about marches? Do you like marches? Yes, he says. He was about 17, but small in stature and good brain. Mr. Hardy says, would you like to direct the band? Oh, I sure would. Mr. Hardy gave him the baton. And he took the baton and walked up to the exact spot where Mr. Hardy would stand. And he gave, or they were going to have a march, and he was going to direct him for the march. And he went on the downbeat. And the band played, started right off. And the faster the band played, the faster he went. You know, it made that little guy's name, made his day.
Oh, man.
He was never so thrilled in his life. The next day he came to the infirmary for some kind of assignment. And, oh, Carl, I directed the band. Yes, I saw you, he said. I saw you. Oh, you done a good job. Oh, you sure did. You know, he lived with that memory through his thing. Oh,
Yeah,
that was.
yeah. Well, that's a neat story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like to write an editorial, you know, remembering 5 years ago from Mr. Hardy. Now, it wasn't mentioned at his funeral anything about coming out to the hospital, entertaining the patients. They looked forward to his concert so much.
Yeah.
So,
Like you say, a lot of them love music.
yeah.
So. Yeah, well, that's a neat story about Mr.
Mr.
Hardy.
Hardy. Yeah.
Well, is there, so when you talked about that there's a professor at the university that we should visit sometime, is that Professor Hallberg?
Yes, and his wife, Erna. She would come out there and help with some of his research projects. Such a devoted, wonderful lady. Of course, at that time they had little baby Francine, and she had a German cradle. And little Francine was in the cradle, and she was rocking with her foot while she was studying in her microscope. After they left Cambridge, Dr. Hallberg and his wife, Erna, they went into chromosome studies at the university. And a couple of years ago, she passed away. And they received condolences from all over the world.
Oh, really?
All over the world. So that's the kind of people out there. There they are. All these.
Oh, and then he put together a little...
Then he put this book together and sent it to me. Yeah, it was wonderful. And you can borrow that if you want, later on if you want to.
Yeah, yeah.
But chromosomes look like this under the microscope.
Oh, so that's what that page is.
Yeah, they were noted all over the world for their work. And Dr. Hallberg is still working. And he says to come on down and we'll show you what we're doing now. He's a dynamo, like you say, some of our projects up there. He worked right with us day and night. So when the professor would work, we didn't mind working either.
Huh.
Yeah.
So, Carl, roughly then it was about 1960 that he was out here doing the...
Yeah. And 80, or late 60s and 70s.
Oh, was that...
Oh yeah,
was
because
that like,
we went on the research trip in '84, and he was still coming up.
Oh,
He
okay.
hadn't-
So really, 60s, 70s, and 80s.
yeah,
probably.
he came out for many years.
And you've kept in touch with him, huh?
Yes, he evidently had my address, and yeah.
And it's just Hallberg.
Mm-hmm. Franz Hallberg. Oh yeah, I was off the record. I was a chauffeur for another one of the doctors, DP doctors from Latvia or someplace, and we would take. They had their church down in Minneapolis, so and at that time we had a 3-passenger Ford wagon. And they just loved that big wagon. They used the little cars in the old country. They would ask me to drive them down to their church. And they, one time I think it was Easter, It was special services. And they were sitting back there, and they had an altar in their house across from the infirmary, or not the infirmary, the main building there.
Oh, sure.
And they had their altar, and they brought light from the altar down in Minneapolis in their church, Greek Orthodox church. And there they sat holding their candle. But they had rigged up a shade for the, and they both made it up.
All the way, huh?
All the way to bring to light the candle on the altar from
wow.
there. They were interesting. Then he would also have to stop at that great big potato, sausage store down there in Minneapolis and buy all this smoked old-time sausages. And my car smelled good for a long time. I liked it. Anyhow, we're getting off the subject here. Dr. Humanek was his name. Yeah. He was a disease control specialist in the Russian army.
Oh, wow.
And he worked in, his was cottage 11, 12, a girls' cottage. And disease control, and he didn't want them to use dust mops. Pushing that mop on the floor, the germs and the dust would fly around. He says, it's no good, no more dust mops in the cottage. So that's what I remember about Dr. Humanek and but he was a wonderful man, and his wife, and they were at Cambridge until after I retired even. But they passed away.
Yeah, I recognize that name.
Yeah, I bet. Humanek, yeah.
What did you think of Dr. Golitis?
She was quite a gal.
Yeah, she was.
Yeah, she was quite a, yeah.
Talk about your spark plug, huh?
Yes, I liked her. I got along good with her. Yeah. How about Dr. Mandak?
Yeah, she was a spark plug too.
You remember, I went down to the clinic here not long ago, and an overnight stay, and there were student nurses down there, students. And I was assigned, one of the fellows was assigned to me, and I couldn't. You already know the punchline, I guess. Before he left, I says, do you live in Cambridge? Yes, he lived, no, in Blaine. I live in Blaine. Is that, do your folks live here? No, I said, did they come from Philippine Islands? No, but my aunt did. But she lives right down here, and so he named the street. Oh, I said, so it turned out to be, his aunt turned out to be, we just mentioned her name, I'm sorry.
Oh, Virginia Mandak?
Mandak, Dr. Mandak. So, he says, this is sure is a small world. I told him, I worked with your aunt in the infirmary for many years. So it was, like he said, a small world. Yeah, well, I'm taking up your time, I'm sorry.
Well, no, I appreciate the time you've spent, because you've added some interesting little facts that I didn't know about. So that's what I want.
Yeah.
So, and you can, like I say, I'll give you a copy, or did I give you? Yeah, you can keep this. I think I got one stapled together. Well, Carl, I should have asked you an embarrassing question. When were you born?
1921. And going to the hospital, boy, they all ask that. 8/11/21.
8/11/21.
Yeah.
Okay, you worked out here then from 1950
1984.
to 1984.
Yeah.
Okay. And you really only worked in the infirmary then, really?
Yes, uh-huh,
Okay,
yeah.
well, thank you, I appreciate your time, and, now, do you want, should I just borrow this now too, and then I can get this all back to you together?
Sure, sure.
This does look like it would be interesting.
Oh, that's a keepsake there.
Oh, yeah, and it's beautiful too.
And,
Very nicely done.
Yeah.
No, I'll be real careful with everything here.
Yeah.
I'll put them all right together here.
Do you want
So,
that?
yeah, if you could copy that too, that would be great.
I
And
didn't
that-
write on it,
that's
so
an extra
it's
one,
good
yeah.
for another trip.
And then you can have this, and if you, there is a question on here, if there's anybody else that you think we should talk to, who
Oh,
worked out there? Is there
Yes.
anybody that
oh,
comes
yes.
to mind?
You gotta talk to the engineers. There's 2 engineers left. Did you know that episode?
I don't know.
We were self-sufficient down there, you know.
Oh, yes.
And in the powerhouse, in the basement, they had 2 great big diesel engines that provided the electricity for the whole campus.
Sure.
And it got to be, they couldn't get parts. St. Paul said, no money for parts. Buford Johnson in Bram, East Central Electric, had friends down St. Paul. And they got together. Buford wanted to send electricity or sell electricity to the state hospital. Well, they said, well, we won't give them any repair parts. And you probably saw that. You checked the North Star. Headlines on the Cambridge Star. East Central Electric comes to the rescue.
I did see that.
Sure.
Yeah, that's in one
And
of the.
all this time, we couldn't get parts, so we had this one diesel limping along for electricity. Of course, that's what Buford wanted.
Oh, that sounds like a scandal.
I don't know the names that you can put in there or not, but
Well, you know, I think that's long enough ago.
if
that-
you talk to Shelley, he was down in engineering, he can cuss him out all kinds of languages. And then there's another one, Matson.
Gordy Matson.
Yes, he could tell you about that.
No, okay, well, I'll have to check into that.
You could call him, and then Gordy doesn't get around too well, but you get the information on telephone.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's Shelley too. Yeah.
Well, thank you a lot, Carl, and if you think of anything else, let me know, and I'll do the same. And I'll get this stuff back to you I'll try to do it next week.
No hurry, but just, that'll be fine. Let's see, you can leave it here at the church office and
Yeah, I'll
pick
give
it
you,
up there.
I can give you a phone call and let you know that I've
Well, yeah,
left it
I
here.
come up here working every Friday. So.
Yeah, well, that'll work good.